Welcome back. Let's get to the papers in just a moment. But let's welcome, of course, our public affairs analyst and journalist, Mr. Dayo Akintobi, who's right here in our Lagos studio and looking ready for the week. Hello, Mr. Akintobi.
Happy International Women's Day to
Thank you.
Let me use you as a point of contact for all Nigerian women and for women all over the globe. Happy International Women's Day.
Yeah, so besides the crisis in the Middle East, one of the things that also was a huge talking point over the weekend was Mr. Daniel Bwala's appearance on head-to-head, Mehdi Hassan's head-to-head on Al Jazeera. I don't want to classify it because I have quite a lot of things to say. Maybe we should begin from where you stand. What were your thoughts and your summations of his performance on head-to-head?
Well, he found himself in a very awkward position because he had made certain pronouncements when he was in the opposition that now run counter to his position now. And that's a very awkward position to be because it looks like he's been hypocritical. And he has a very unique trajectory because he started out in the APC. And then when the election was coming and the president chose his running mate, he stood on principle that he was against a Muslim ticket and he defected to the PDP and effectively became the spokesperson for the PDP and became antagonistic towards the APC and said a lot of negative things, both about the party, about their presidential running mate. I mean, he said so many things and the internet never forgets. Well, at the end of the election cycle, he found himself back in the APC, became a favorite of the administration, was given a very key spokesperson's position to where he now had to defend the very policies he criticized. And well, then he went for this interview on Al Jazeera with a take no prisoners type of interviewer who asked him very pointed questions about some of the pronouncements in the past, which he denied having ever said, and video evidence was produced that showed that he actually said these things. It was a less than becoming appearance for him, an outing, because there was egg on his face at the end of the day, which showed that he was being hypocritical and clever by half. However, he issued a rebuttal to the criticism, I think yesterday, on his Facebook page or something, where he now said that he wasn't aware, that he wasn't informed that the interviewer would delve into his past. And I said, excuse me.
We did hear the interviewer say that you put up, notifications on your social media and videos showing that you were preparing. What were you preparing for?
Absolutely. He was preparing for the interview and thought he'd get softball questions as often these type of interviews produce. He didn't do his homework and research on that particular journalist to know that this was someone who was very thorough, had done his homework, had actually collated all of his previous past statements and juxtaposed them against what he's saying today. So his claim is he was never informed. And I think that if you grant that type of an interview, it's a no-holds-barred interview. There's no off-limits areas. Anything goes. Once you've said, okay, yes, I will sit down to this interview with you, he should have expected that, especially because he is particularly controversial because of that contrarian position he's taken. That's what everybody knows him for. Is that, wait a minute, what kind of politician are you? You were saying less than a year ago, just a little over a year ago, you were taking this particular position. Now you are diametrically opposed. Is it because you are the feeding trough now to where, you are a part of those whose hands are in the cookie jar, you're enjoying the benefits of being in the administration, so now all of a sudden everything you said before is null and void? Well, we haven't forgotten, the internet hasn't forgotten, the Nigerian people haven't forgotten, and so you have no credibility because you've taken a position in the past. What now makes you think that you can now stand publicly and say something that's exactly opposite? Well, I think if I were caught unawares like that, my position would have been, okay, sure, I had that position then, but now that I have had an opportunity to be a part of the administration, I've seen things from a different perspective. So, yes, I've changed you don't defend that type of a thing. Rather, you admit it. And people might be willing to give you a pass on it if you are man enough to say, yes, I thought like this in the past, but I've had reason to change my thinking. I mean, as human beings, we have the right to change our opinion if there's credible basis that changes your mind. Remember when he was saying all these things, he was in the opposition, and that's what the opposition does, is you criticize your competition. So he was right to do that then, and perhaps he's right now to defend where he's at. But I don't think he handled it well enough in such a way that he could have been absolved of hypocrisy or being two-faced or talking from both sides of his mouth.
You know, at the end of the day, I just smiled through. There was an off-ramp he could have explored, but I think perhaps it was the pace, which the interview is really, that's what is, if you know Mendy, Mendy will not allow you to breathe while you're responding. He's taking up another question. So the strategy for Mendy was simple. We're going to challenge your government on security, corruption, and one more thing, economy.
And
of course, not forgetting the president's past records.
Yeah, but these were the, you know, all of these, other were appendages of these three major things. So the strategy was, I'm going to use your words when you're in the opposition to challenge you what is different now, given the fact that you're working.
Yes.
So it was what he said,
yes,
primarily that used on literally every one of this. Now,
yes,
when you get yourself in that kind of position, like you said, what he could have done was to first, don't deflect, don't parry, admit, and even go further to say, I even said this, I said this, maybe it's not on your record, I even said this, that when you cite three things you say that are contrary to the position where you stand now, you will naturally disarm the interviewer, who will now begin to look for a new position to tackle you, because now you have not only admitted to the fact that what he's bringing to you is true, you have even given him extra 2-3 more things that you said, and you have a position. That way you sway the conversation away from your person to the government. So at the end of the day, it was it was just a very terrible situation for him that he found himself. But on the other part, what I also discovered is the fact that, and this is my admonition to Nigerians, I'm sorry to say, but our politics is not driven by ideology. Kayode Fayemi, the former governor of Ekiti State, admitted on camera that they were aware that what Jonathan did was right, but it was all politics. So that's why I say I don't trust politicians. I don't take what they say too seriously until they prove themselves to be otherwise. Because people took those things, maybe that Bwala said, Reno has said, FFK has said, everybody has said, and they took it literally and they ran with their emotion. And like, come on, man. So you were not very serious with this thing you were saying? You were just playing politics on our emotion? This is a lesson, and I hope everybody has learned. I don't want to go deep. I have more things to say.
Well, you guys are kind on Bwala, because the truth of the matter is that he lied. He lied on a lot of things.
No, we've said that.
Not just on, you know, his past criticism of the president, and you know, prior to him winning the elections, he lied on the declaration of emergency. He lied on the Safe School Initiative. He lied on, you know, some of the things that he had said about the president and the position he currently holds. He lied on, you know, about, you know, having described the designation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern as a hoax, you know. And so for somebody who is representing the administration, a lot more was expected of him in terms of not just preparation, but taking responsibility, Jeffrey. And that is what we do not see, you know, with spokespersons of the administration. It's not all, you know, records that are, you know, woeful, that are bad. If indeed, perhaps, you know, Mr. Bwala had done his research, he would have been able to pick 1 or 2 things that may be inadequate, 1 or 2 or 3 things that the administration is doing right, you know, such that he can put up a proper defense for the administration. But I counted a number of lies from that interview. I found time to watch it.
That's why I was saying that the off-ramp would have been admitting I was lying, or it was false, or I didn't have a clear understanding. Now I do. In fact, I can tell you that I have done, I said this, I said this, I said this. Do you have that in your record? I said those things. But this off-ramp.
So has his position become untenable now after the expose?
but amongst the 3 spokespersons, let's, you know, it's because I like to look at things holistically. I can imagine, with a greater sense of respect, I don't know whether Bayo Nanuga will be able to or will want to go there, or Sunday Dare will want to go there. So it was him that chose to go there. And so That in itself is one credit to him.
Well, let's
go
head
to
to the papers now. I was starting with the New Telegraph this morning. The New Telegraph captures the events of the weekend in the Middle East. Middle East crisis, fuel will hit 1,500 naira per litre in Nigeria if conflict persists. That's ascribed to Petrian, led by Dr. Billis Gillis Harris. And of course, there are a number of just two riders. Kuwait Airport, Bahrain desalination unit struck as Iran continues Gulf attacks. Pope prays roar bombs in Middle East seizes. And that's about it. Calls for dialogue. Explosion hits U.S. embassy in Oslo. It appears as if the U.S. is biting more than it can chew. I wonder if that President Trump anticipated that Iran will respond with this kind of resolve, Mr. Akintobi?
Well, the war is taking on a different dimension, because when you think of war, you think about army against army, man against man. Now, Iran is using the tactic of hitting key infrastructure that is necessary for the sustenance of life. Look at this desalination plant, for example. The Middle East is mostly a desert, has water problems. And so they've created these desalination plants that provide potable water to almost the whole of the Middle East. Water, of course, is vital to sustenance of life. Once they start targeting desalination plants, they are jeopardizing the very lives of the people in those areas. In addition, Iran has started hitting things like Amazon Web Services, things like Microsoft Offices. So they're actually targeting the technological backbone of the Middle East, which now begins to call to question the wisdom of America and Israel going into this thing the way they've gone into it. And as you mentioned earlier, the pure devastation of human lives, particularly women and children, and it's poignant at this time with International Women's Day to see what women are going through in this particular situation. And then you see that yesterday now they've announced a new supreme leader, the son of the immediate past Ayatollah. And remember that Israel has threatened that each and every new leader you empanel, we will eliminate. So they've essentially ramped up the ante. They've upped the ante by announcing, it's like daring Israel and the United States.
Right.
Saying, okay, you've threatened this, okay, so now we've gone ahead and empaneled a new leader, let's see you do your worst. So Iran seems to be coming across as fearless, as bold, as courageous, and as fighting what they view as an unjust war. That Israel and the United States are the aggressors. And the public perception is starting to shift, depending on where it was to begin with. Sympathy actually is going towards Iran now. That's the truth. And the US and Israel are seen as being belligerent, being aggressors. And word is starting to spread that this might actually be an onslaught that is geared towards the resources of Iran. That President Trump himself has made certain pronouncements. For example, when he's talking about you can't appoint your own leader unless it's somebody I approve.
Iran is a sovereign nation.
Oh, goodness me.
And you know, recall, Mr. Akintobi, now it's coming to light that, you know, last year, the IDF, or is it Israel, had announced that it had obliterated the nuclear weapons capacity of Iran. So what is different now that it has decided to launch this attack and declare a war on Iran in conjunction with the United States? And they're saying that if they do not, Iran has the capacity, you know, to launch its nuclear weapons. So what do we believe? Once
you invoke this word terrorism, it's a catch-all phrase now. Once you invoke that, all of a sudden, hackles rise, and everything but the kitchen sink is thrown out at whatever it is. Sometimes it's just propaganda. Because the justification for this war is that Iran is a terrorist state, is sponsoring terrorism across the world, is threatening different, especially Israel. Remember, Israel has always positioned himself as vulnerable, that is surrounded by people who question the legitimacy of his existence and who have sworn that they will not rest until they eliminate the state of Israel as we know it today. So Israel uses that as a foundation for all of its aggression in the area that is just trying to preserve itself. First law of human nature is self-preservation. So Israel says, we're just trying to preserve ourselves against all these enemies who surround us. But this attack seems to have been unprovoked. As you said, nothing is different today than it was a year ago in terms of, okay, so we've eliminated your nuclear capability, so why all of a sudden this now? What new threats are we posing that makes you have to do this at this point in time?
You know, the world lives where we're in a new world order where might is right. The only way to leverage and deter strong countries, the West, with their own hypocrisy, is your own balance of terror. Why are they not going to North Korea, for instance? They know what will happen if they, in fact, that one is very busy waiting anxiously for them to look in his direction. Because let's even go to the history of Iran. They literally helped build Iran under the prime minister who came in and said, I'm going to nationalize this oil for whatever reason. The CIA and the MI16 took him out and brought in the Shah, who was pro-Western. So the hypocrisy is all around. So what they are saying is they are telling Iran, your broader intent invalidates your aspiration to have nuclear weapon. They are now defining it because might is right. So that's why Iran is not backing down. Anybody who thinks that taking out an Ayatollah, the first Ayatollah died naturally. The second one was killed. I don't know what's going to happen to this third one. If you understand how convoluted their structure is, it's not going to be a walk in the park. In fact, the way they throw their missile gives you an idea of who they are. Yeah. We will go down with everyone as much as possible. So sometimes the West creates these monsters and then trying to fix the monster they've created. So anyway, let's come back to Nigeria. And this Nigeria is the paper we'll look at.
Yes.
VAT windfall, plenty wind for states, little sunshine for citizens. I love whoever wrote this is brilliant. Lack of visible projects angers Nigerians across many states. 903 billion inflows swallowed by bogus spending. TSOs ask citizens to demand accountability. I had to look at the fact distributable amount of last year, in December. I think everything came to about 2.5 trillion, but you know, the statutory payment, charges for collection, it now came to about 1 now. VAT in itself was almost 1 trillion naira, about 800 and something billion. So, where is the money going to? They are keeping this money. Oh,
if I had 1 million naira for the answer to that question, I'd be a rich person. The thing is, you're talking about VAT receipts. That's just in lieu of the new tax law that just came into effect. How about let's go further and say, how about the subsidy savings? You're complaining about the VAT receipts, that there's a lot more money in the coffers of the states and we're not seeing the effect of it. But how about even subsidy removal that happens since 2023 and has put a lot more money in the coffers of the state governments and the federal government? We've not seen the impact of that, you know, and so I'm not surprised.
What about the borrowings?
I'm
the
not
extent
surprised.
of borrowings.
Yes, absolutely. The borrowings are up. Borrowings are up. Revenue is up. But yet dividends of democracy to the grassroots are reducing on a daily basis. And you know, the government throws out all these rosy numbers about GDP and you know, CPI and you know, foreign reserves and you ask yourself that these numbers look rosy, but the reality on the ground is much different. I read a couple of stories. I read a story on Friday, I believe, in one of the mainstream newspapers that said economic hardship is forcing Nigerian parents to remove their children from private schools and register them in public schools because they can't afford to pay private school fees any longer. These are the kind of statistics that to me ring true, as opposed to highfalutin, over-bloated numbers that are coming from a theoretical standpoint from the cloistered halls in Abuja. But when you go and look at the reality on the ground, okay, petrol prices have increased in the last couple of days because of this war in Iran. What is that? What knock-on effect is that going to have on our pockets? Our income hasn't increased. Inflation is going to go up. So you ask the state governments. The federal government has said, look, we've given the money to the states. They have plenty of money. So go and hold your governor responsible. It's not us. So we've given them the money. And I'm waiting for the governors to say, oh, we've given the local government the money. Go and hold your chairman and your councillor. You know, because nobody wants to take responsibility. But where is the money? All we hear every day is there's more money coming in. There's more money coming in. But we're not seeing the effects at the federal level. Contractors are owed, pensions are owed, salaries are slow to be paid. Where is the money? Show me the money. You know?
Well, Abuja Inquirer has already, you know, captured that particular concern, and you know, it's reminiscent of that time when there was some form of regulation, or we now, you know, recall rather when there was some form of regulation in the petroleum industry, but there is none right now. So it appears as if whether we like it or not, we're going to have to buy petrol at whatever price it hits amid this ongoing Middle East crisis. But if we can, let's look at the Vanguard newspaper, how FG's $2.3 billion electricity project failed. And FG begins new phase after failure of 5-year, 25,000 megawatts plan. Mr. Akintobi, President Tinubu had said, if I do not deliver 24-hour electricity within 4 years, do not vote for me. And we're approaching the 4th year, the next election. So what is the choice left to Nigerians now? Do they take that challenge that
I'm sure he's wishing he could eat those words now. But because obviously he's done almost 3.5 years, 3 years plus, and the power situation is not improving. Matter of fact, it's even getting worse. When you look at the totality of megawatts available to the national grid, it keeps dropping on a daily basis. And you ask yourself, I think this whole thing goes back to the privatization of the electricity sector back in the previous administration. I think it wasn't a well thought out exercise. I think there was a lot of cronyism, there was a lot of corruption involved in that privatization, to where many of the players were not well equipped. They didn't have the deep pockets enough to upgrade the infrastructure. They didn't have the technological know-how. And they didn't bring in JV partners who would put them through and make this thing run seamlessly. So we're suffering the effects of bad government policy. That's what has led to this, to where 3 years into the new administration, electricity supply is no better than it was when this administration came in. I also remember, I think it was the immediate past Minister of Works and Power in the Buhari administration, before power got taken away from him, who said it's not rocket science to, before of course the thing fell in his lap, he said it's not rocket science to solve the electricity problem. It shouldn't take anything.
I think he even said he never said that or something.
Oh, did he deny? Well, the internet never forgets. I'm sure somewhere
I think there was an argument to that
having
effect.
said it somewhere. But yeah, no, it's not a good situation at all. And we keep hearing about the deal with Siemens. So maybe when Femi Fani-Kayode gets to Germany, maybe he can help us find out from Siemens what is the situation. President Buhari signed a deal with Siemens. President Tinubu, in one of his trips recently, resigned that MOU with Siemens, if you recall. Resigned it so that Siemens could come in and begin to turn this thing around. And Siemens has had history in Nigeria in terms of this power before, and we still have this problem years down the road. So I don't know what the solution is. It seems to defy all solution. We've thrown money at it, it didn't help. We've thrown private players, private sector participation in it, it hasn't helped. But yet, you look at other countries.
We have even decentralized.
Yes, you look at other countries around the world that are not as formidable or economically capable as Nigeria, and power is seamless there. Why is it such a problem for us?
And power is oxygen. If we're not able to achieve, 100%, 24-hour power supply rather, then the economic liberalization that we seek would, elude us.
You can't have a manufacturing or industrial base without power. And if you don't have an industrial or manufacturing base, you can't have full employment at the end of the day. So it's critical to economic growth.
And we hope the message hits home as much as possible. But Absolutely. We must thank you very much, Mr. Dayo Akintobi, for coming on the program today. Mr. Akintobi is a public affairs analyst and journalist. My pleasure always. Good morning, Nigeria. And so we'll take a moment now. When we return, it will be time to kickstart the conversation on the cause for Nigerian women, and indeed globally. So stay with us, we'll be right back.